first of all, thank you all for being here to help launch this book, which appears in bookshops for sale tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So you're having a preview. I thank my publishers for making it appear. I found my editor and the whole firm very easy to work with, and it's actually been a pleasure working with them all, and indeed with Kerry here, who's the publicist for the book. The title of the book was thought up by my wife, Jill Peirce, who's here this evening. I couldn't think of a suitable title for this book, and I tried all sorts of titles, and I was just at a dead end. So I said to Jill, what do you suggest? We were walking up Christchurch Hill in Hampstead, and without a hesitation or pause, she said, call it Ways to Go Beyond and Why They Work. So that's what it's called. And indeed, Jill is one of the inspirations for it. She's been teaching spiritual practices for many years. And I've seen how, through her workshops on chanting and the sound and the voice, people who are religious or not religious can all take part in these practices and gain a lot from them. The important thing is here that it's based on experience, not on prior belief. And that's the theme that runs through this book. I think that all religions start from experience, and and spiritual practices are ways of connecting with a consciousness greater than our own. Some materialists do these practices believing it's all inside their brain, and that's all right. If that's what they believe, that's fine. It's an interesting thing that the value of spiritual practices is now so well established scientifically. It's shown that they, on the whole, make people live longer, become happier, and healthier. The converse is presumably true. Those that don't have spiritual or religious practices live shorter, are unhealthy, which is why I think militant atheism might become a health warning. So in my previous book, to which this is a sequel, Science and Spiritual Practices, I discuss 7 different spiritual practices, starting with meditation, ending with pilgrimage. This book has a further 7 spiritual practices. I mean, there are many, many spiritual practices, not an exhaustive catalogue. But this one contains discussions of some which are not normally thought of as spiritual practices. Sports, for example. I think sports are one of the ways in the modern world in which probably most people have a sense of going beyond themselves, of connecting with something bigger than themselves. Many people who take part in sports, whether team games like football or free climbing or diving or skiing or running, find that in the pursuit of the sport they find themselves going beyond their normal state of being and connecting with this greater kind of spiritual reality. And this happens in all sorts of ways. Anyway, I have a chapter on sports. There's one on learning from animals. This is something I'm very keen on. As you know, I wrote a book called Dogs That Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home. And fortunately, here this evening is Pam Smart, who had the prototypic dog that knew when its owner was coming home. Pam's worked with me as my research assistant and secretary for 25 years, and her wonderful terrier, JT, is no longer with us. But Pam is an essential part of my work. I collect stories from people about their own experiences, and I have databases with more than 10,000 of these stories on them. Pam is the curator of these databases, among other things. I'm also very glad that Dr. Guy Hayward is here. Where are you, Guy? Yeah. Oh, there he is. He's my postdoctoral research fellow and works with me and helps me in many ways. Guy is a co-founder of the British Pilgrimage Trust, and he also runs the Choral Evensong website, www.choralevensong.org, where you can look up choral evensong anywhere in Britain or Ireland, anytime, and it'll tell you the nearest one, and with one click you can find what they're singing. It's a marvellous resource. Anyway, in this book I also deal, as Kerry said, with fasting. Fasting is a spiritual practice. It's very simple. It's extremely healthy. I think that the health, spiritual, physical, and psychological of the nation would be vastly improved if there were more fasting going on. And it has the great advantage of being free. And you can pay thousands of pounds to eat nothing at a health farm. I myself do it every year. I do it in Lent, usually in Holy Week, for at least 3 days, sometimes 7 days, just water. And it's a marvellous way of cleaning out the system, physically and mentally and emotionally. I have a chapter on psychedelics, and this, as you know, is now an area of tremendous new resurgence of research in this area, thanks largely to the efforts of Amanda Fielding, who's here this evening, who's done wonderful work in promoting research. And this scientific research shows what they do to the brain, what they do to the body, but also what they do in expanding the mind of those who take them. I think psychedelics for many people are a rite of passage, an opening to the spiritual realm. They certainly were for me when I first took LSD in 1971. I'm not advocating constant drug use, nor that they are given to children under the age of 5 or anything like that. But I do think that in the modern world, for many people, they are the way in which they open up spiritually. In the book, I also discuss a number of other practices, including holy days and festivals, which I think are one of the best ways in which we can create a space for the spiritual dimension to be part of our lives, making Sunday or Saturday or whatever day is in our tradition a day in which we just do as little work as possible and have fun. That's what these days are for, and so are festivals. These are all part of this book. That's not all the practices, but you'll see when you look at it, there are more. Prayer is probably one of the more important chapters because I distinguish it from meditation, which I discuss in Science and Spiritual Practices. Again, it's an interesting thing that this is the only practice, I think, where you have to be religious to do it. If you don't believe there's any reality beyond yourself, you can't pray. You can meditate. A recent survey of scientists, engineers and doctors in Britain, France and Germany showed that about half of them are non-religious, about half of them are spiritual and or religious. Of the spiritual and or religious, about 20% meditate, and of the non-religious, about 10% meditate. There's not much difference. When it comes to prayer, 55% of the spiritual oblique religious pray, as opposed to less than 1% of the non-religious. So prayer is perhaps the chapter that it's not everyone can do it. That does presuppose a belief in something beyond yourself, which materialists and atheists on the whole don't believe in. They think that consciousness is just inside brains and primarily inside human brains. Anyway, the final chapter is on why these practices work. Why should things as different as sports, fasting, meditation, prayer, singing and dancing, why should they all have spiritual effects? Well, I won't tell you the answer. And I think there is an answer. And you'll have to wait till chapter 8 to find out what it is. Finally, I could just mention that if any of you wanted or know anyone who want to hear more about this, I'm giving a book launch lecture on Monday next week at St James's, Piccadilly at 7 o'clock. I'm giving another one the week after at King's College London. Then on March the 2nd, I'm giving a workshop with my 2 sons, Merlin, who can't be with us this evening because he's in Western Canada, Cosmo, where are you? There's Cosmo. Cosmo, who, those of you who've seen the current iPhone ad, will have heard Cosmo's soundtrack, which is now, his song is the soundtrack for that ad, now being heard by about 1 billion people. Anyway, Cosmo will be there, and Jill is also going to be with us, leading the group in some chanting. This is the first time we've given a workshop together. It's in London. There are some pamphlets on it on the table by the book, near the books. So if you're interested in going further and going beyond in easy bite-sized chunks in a single day, March the 2nd is the day. So all that remains is to say thank you again for coming, and don't go, because there's more food, there's more wine, and just be here and enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you.